And I thought I'd start off by trying to define what efficiency is. In my simplistic language, efficiency is inputs versus outputs. How do I produce more with less? Or how do I achieve the same or better results with fewer resources? Now, when we're looking at business analysis, often you will find that there's a lot of financial analysis around efficiency, and efficiency ratios are presented, derived from your P&L or your balance sheet. I don't find those particularly useful in driving my own business forward. And I prefer to look at measuring efficiency in a slightly different way, really getting down to the coalface or the grassroots level and saying, well, how do we measure it? Are we actually measuring cost efficiency? Are we measuring energy efficiency, time efficiency, labor efficiency? And the more practical examples, such as if you were looking at your car, how many liters can I travel per 100 kilometers? Or if you drive a Tesla, maybe how many kilometers can I travel per charge, et cetera, et cetera. And these are the more practical examples of how we can measure efficiency. The other part of today's session is to look at automating and saying, how can we automate some of the processes in our business to improve efficiency? Now, in Kilimanjaro, we have for many years had a saying that says you can only drive one tractor. So no matter how good you are as a tractor driver, you can only drive one tractor. And the image that used to come to mind was this a whole lot of small tractors with tractor drivers on them. Some of those tractors are in not that great condition. And when we said you can only drive one tractor, what we had in mind was to say you really needed to make sure that the tractor that you were driving was the biggest and the best tractor that you could afford. And you needed to make sure that you were driving it as well as you could. So automation really is oiling the wheels to remove friction between workflows in your connected business, and how you can use technology to actually do that. So we're talking about things like streamlining and digitizing and making sure that you've got real-time information across the organization. It is quite interesting to note that when ERP systems were first created, they were a spin-off from MRP systems. And the goal was actually to provide real-time data across the organization. And we're only really getting to this point now where, with the benefits of add-on systems and independent software vendors and configuration, we can actually provide real-time information across the organization. But the next step in that is actually using that information for real-time decision-making. And I think you'll see some examples of this today. Those of you that have attended these sessions before will recall that we went through a series of connected business sessions, and MYOB came up with a concept of connected businesses and spoke about empowered workforces, real-time insights, experiences that matter, and complete control. What we're going to be looking at today is actually within that circle, how you smooth the wheels between what we would call the key workflows. And again, leveraging off some work that MYOB has done. MYOB has grouped the workflows in an organization into these 6 key workflows. The first one being accounting and tax, the second one, your customers, the third one, employees. And I'll talk about that again a little bit later, because that's absolutely key in the types of businesses that we're dealing with. The next one is your financial workflows, your projects, and your supply chain. So in looking at how you can reduce friction between these different elements of your business, I'll give a simple example. If you were to, for example, take finance and look at your accounts payable workflow, you might chart it like this and say, in my business, this is how accounts payable works. Purchase order is created, the goods are received, the invoice is received, the invoice is entered into my accounting system, and so on and so on. And just draw it out exactly the way that it is. And then start looking at that and look for the opportunities to automate within that diagram that you've created. So you might, in fact, have no accounts payable workflow at all. And we've seen this where invoices arrive from suppliers, they get put in an in tray, they get ordered by due date, and on the due date, somebody just simply pays the money across. You should really look at this carefully, because you need to have now an invoice approval process. You need to have delegated authorities so that somebody can approve invoices up to, let's say, $500 and somebody else up to $5,000 and somebody in excess of that. You should be looking at matching purchase orders to invoices, especially because of the amount of fraud that's taking place today and I think it's called invoice redirection. Looking at cash flow management and looking at these various aspects of security. So that's, once you've identified those opportunities to automate, you can start looking at solutions. And this is where your implementing partner can actually help you. So you can first of all look at better use of the core functionality in your system. A lot of configuration can happen in the system. You can look at independent vendors who have integrated solutions that are already integrated into your current system. And there are many out there, of which there will be some examples spoken about today. You could even look at outsourcing, where human intervention is still required. But because we've all got used to remote workplaces throughout COVID, it's not such a stretch to say that instead of my accounts payable sitting in Melbourne when I'm sitting in Sydney, or sitting in Auckland when I'm sitting in Hamilton, I could conceivably have my accounts payable function sitting in Manila or sitting in Sri Lanka without too much of a stretch. So it's really worth looking at that and taking the lower value work that humans are doing currently and then elevating your current team to provide more value by actually dealing with clients. And it could be a combination of the above. When I was looking at that and looking at those workflows, I was reminded of some work that was done by MYOB a long time ago. And when I introduced Gary Katzif later, Gary actually was the man behind this research, strangely, by some strange coincidence. But it left me wondering how much the world has changed post-COVID and whether the challenges facing businesses today are any different to the challenges that were facing businesses 10 or 15 years ago. And the research that was done by Rothcorp back then, if you have a look at it, certainly had a lot of pain points that revolved around people. So recruitment revolved around people, the ability to offer employee benefits, staff retention, and so on. And you can see this theme of the workflows flowing through here and saying, how can we improve these things? Perhaps it's through onboarding, perhaps it's through workforce management, perhaps it's through better payroll systems, but certainly using technology to improve efficiency in your business. And then finally, just some change management guidelines. And this has really come from our own personal experience. We've been through a lot of change in our company, including merging with another organization of similar size to us, and having to get through all of the system issues and the cultural issues, et cetera, the leadership issues. And I do keep a little black book that I've kept for many, many years where I make notes about things that I think would be useful to others. And my black book has a number of guidelines for managing change. So as soon as you start changing, oiling the wheels between these workflows, looking at improved efficiency, that is change in an organization, and it does disturb people. So first of all, have a good reason to make the change. Don't just change for change's sake. Make sure that you investigate carefully and know what you're doing and why. Involve people in the change. People will only support what they've helped to create. Involve everybody that's going to be impacted, and that'll make the change so much easier. Put a respected person in charge of the process. Generally, we find that business owners in businesses of your size struggle to delegate, and the result is that there is no movement and nothing changes. So put a respected person in charge of the process. Create what we call a transition team, just a small team of people with these respected person in charge, a number of people that are going to be affected. And that team is given the responsibility for making the change. Once they've made the change, they can be disbanded. Provide training, not only in the technical aspect of the change, but in values and behaviors that you expect to see, and bring in outsider help, which I mentioned before. Outsourcing at whatever level in the organization, don't be scared of that. And establish symbols of change, really, really important to acknowledge, reward people, celebrate your success. It's really worth doing. And then finally, if you are going to change, because the human brain doesn't like a sort of ongoing continuum of change and likes to box it down into manageable chunks, what you need to do is take your current processes, and when you're ready, unfreeze that, change, and then refreeze. And then you will move on to the next task team dealing with the next change. But don't just do it as a continuum, because people do get very rattled by that. And then finally, just a quote from former Cisco CEO, John Chambers, who said there are only two kinds of companies, those that were hacked and those that don't yet know they were hacked. The reason that I bring this up is that, again, last week, I saw a ticket logged by a client who had a CryptoLock virus. The question was asked, do you have current backups? And the answer was no, we don't. So make sure that you back up regularly, you have a hierarchy of backups, grandfather, father, child, and that you do a test restore from time to time. And I guess that is my introduction